All right, it's time to talk about the Utah Jazz. I'm recording this late. They just got finished playing game against the Orlando Magic. It was super close, went into overtime. Keontae George hit a crazy shot in this game. And I think they've been one of the surprise teams of this season. And maybe a lot of people haven't been paying attention to them. I'm a Jazz fan, so I've watched most of their games this season, and I just caught the end of this game. But right, you see the record. They're 10-17. That's not very impressive, right? They lost tonight. They lost a couple days ago to the Lakers in another pretty close game. But going into this year, they were projected somewhere in the 17 to 18 win range on the season, and at the pace they're at, I mean, they're looking at getting, I would say, 30 wins this year, if not more. That's almost double, right? If things continue on the exact same track, and I just think that's really impressive, and I think they've been one of the most fun teams to watch. I think Keontae George has had a true breakout season. In this game, he ended with 27. He wasn't super efficient shooting the ball, 2 for 8 from 3, but 9 for 10 from the free throw line. He's been really great at getting to the line this year, shooting over 90% from the line this year. His passing has been way better this year. He had 9 assists, 4 rebounds, 2 steals. +7 in the plus-minus, so he was the most efficient player in that sense in this entire game for the Jazz. I believe they were down 16 with less than 7 minutes to go in this game, is what they said. It was 110-94 at one point in the fourth quarter. And then the Jazz went on a crazy run, brought it to overtime, ended up losing, which might be the best thing for this team because they do still want to get a good lottery pick but be competitive in games. Maybe that's just my thoughts, but I think they've looked really great this season. Standings-wise, they're a game and a half out of the 10 seed. I think if they were really pushing, if they were really healthy, there's a very small chance they could sneak into the play-in. I don't think that's where they want to be necessarily. I think they want to be in close games. I think they want to play in bigger, important games, give the young guys a lot of experience in close games, and then I think potentially make a push for the playoffs in the next couple seasons. I think this could be the last year of the rebuild for the Jazz, where they're, I won't say intentionally losing games, but last year it did appear that sometimes they would, throw in their worst players in close games and kind of try to lose those games. And this year it doesn't seem like they're doing that as much, but I think they're okay with losing some of these games. They're 5-5 in their last 10, which is great. A couple days ago, they were in that 10 seed for like 30 minutes, I think. So that was pretty cool. And one thing that's really promising to me as a fan of the Jazz is offensive rating wise right now, they're top 15 in the league. They're number 14. Barely behind teams like the Raptors, the 76ers, the Cavs, even the Magic, and kind of in that same range right now as a team that's playing really well like the Heat. They've struggled as of the last few games, but overall this season they've had a good year. They're higher in offensive rating than the Suns with Devin Booker, than the Hawks, than the Trailblazers, than the Bucks. Like, they've had a good offensive season. And then their defensive rating, on the other hand, is second to last in the NBA. I don't think that's actually right. Yeah, it's second to last in the NBA, according to this. But when you look at that, you can also say, hey, Walker Kessler's only played 5 games this season. He is the defensive anchor. I think when he's in the game, you could potentially jump up to top 25, even top 20, and I think a team that's rebuilding to be top 15 in offense, and I think if they were fully healthy, top 20 in defense, with how young they are, that's a really good sign for the future. And when it comes just to how people are playing on the team, Lauri Markkanen's back to his, I would say, almost all-star level of play. He's averaging 28, 7, and 2. He's just been really good this year. He didn't play tonight or against the Lakers. And then Keontae George has really been the surprise. I was someone who wasn't super high on him because he's been really inefficient his entire career. But this year has kind of been a breakout year for him. Looking at his basketball reference, last season he averaged 17 on... Let's see his percentages, 39% from the field and 34% from 3. This year he's averaging 24 points a game on 45% from the field and 36% from 3. I mean, that's a huge increase. And something I saw a graphic a couple days ago that had his stats compared to Donovan Mitchell's stats in both of their third seasons. And obviously this season's really young. He's only played 26. I don't think the game that just happened is on here yet, game 27. And Donovan Mitchell had a whole season under his belt of stats, right? But if you look at Donovan Mitchell's stats, right, Donovan Mitchell in his junior season, his third year, averaged 24 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists on similar efficiency to Keontae George, 45% from the field and 37% from three. He was an all-star. Keontae George is averaging 24, 7 assists, so 3 more than Donovan Mitchell and about the same amount of rebounds. Really similar shooting splits. Just having, an incredible year so far. I would say he should be in that all-star conversation. I think he deserves to maybe be in the conversation. I don't think he deserves to make it. The difference between Donovan Mitchell and Keontae George in the third season is the Jazz made the playoffs and were a really competitive team, whereas this year I think the Jazz will be a lottery team. So that's the main difference in why I don't think he is going to make an all-star game. And also the West is just so competitive with so many good guards this year that I just don't see it as happening. But I think, there's potential for an all-star future, right? And so that's huge. The efficiency has shocked me this year. You don't super often see someone who shoots 39% from the field in their first 2 seasons jump all the way to 45%. I think he should be one of the front runners for most improved player. Ultimately, he's had such a great year. Another super interesting player on the Jazz this year has been Ace Bailey. I think some people expected a lot more from him in his rookie season, right? He was seen as kind of prior to the draft as a consensus kind of top 3 guy behind Cooper Flagg and Dylan Harper, and he ended up going 5th to the Jazz. And I think he's played really well. I think he's played smart, and he's not the guy that's scoring 20 points a game as a rookie, but that's not the role they need him for. If you remove Walker Kessler from this, because he's only played in 5 games, he is the 3rd leading scorer on the Jazz right now. They have a bunch of guys that are scoring 8 points to 10 points, right? So it's not like he's outscoring them a lot, but he's playing in big games, playing in big moments. He's shooting decent from the field. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it's something like 44% from the field and 35% from 3. That's not bad for a rookie. Like I said, Keontae George was much lower than that as a rookie. And so I think there's a lot of potential for this core in Utah, which brings up an interesting question, and that's, do you trade Lauri Markkanen? I think going into this year and after the season Lauri had last year, the idea was to trade him, get some young assets, get some draft capital, keep going on this rebuild. But I just wonder if the front office and if Utah's looking at how this team is playing together. It seems like they're building a lot of chemistry. Will Hardy has been, I think he is a really good coach. He just hasn't had the team to show that he's a really good coach. The question now changes is can you build around Lauri Markkanen? Can he be your centerpiece? Him and Keontae George and Walker Kessler and Ace Bailey, hopefully, right, develops into that 4th guy, and they can have a core of those 4, and then potentially, losing a lot this season still, potentially get a top 3 pick, and that can be kind of your 5th guy, and you have that big core to build around and kind of see who works. I think they've got great pieces off the bench like Kyle Filipowski on a super cheap contract. I think he makes $3 million a season for the next couple years. Bryce Sensabaugh is really efficient off the bench, really good scorer. Isaiah Collier is a great ball handler, great passer. And Walter Clayton Jr. has had some flashes where he's looked really good. He's only playing 16 minutes a night. He hasn't played in every game, but he's averaging 3 assists in 16 minutes. That's pretty decent. I think there's the conversation of we shouldn't trade Lauri Markkanen, right? And I found this article, and this is by the Jazz fan, a reporter, and it's from kind of September because there hasn't been as many trade rumors about Lauri Markkanen just because he's been playing so well, and Danny Ainge is known to not give up his best players without getting a absolute haul of picks. Even with the Jazz, we saw that with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. So many first-round picks, and I just don't think a lot of teams are willing to give that up for Lauri, and I think the Jazz really value him. And some of these trade ideas I look at, this was kind of the one that I initially liked going into the year and thought the Jazz should do. If the Pistons would want to do this, I think it's a really good trade for them, actually. The Jazz would get Tobias Harris, Jaden Ivey, and Ron Holland, and you kind of hope Jaden Ivey progresses and gets a lot better. He's on a really good contract. And then you also get a couple first-round picks. The problem with this trade, looking at it now, is, I mean, you're getting Tobias Harris just to make the money work. You don't really care about having him on your team long-term. Jaden Ivey is a really interesting prospect, coming off an injury, though. Ron Holland is also an interesting young piece, so that's good to have. But you get 2 first-round picks from a team that has Cade Cunningham in his prime, and by the 2029 and 2031 season, which is when these picks are for, Cade Cunningham is probably still on that team. I don't see right now any sign of that team getting worse. I mean, you never know in 2031, right? That's a long time away, but Utah has a really hard time getting stars, and I would say Lauri Markkanen is a fringe all-star kind of guy every year if he's playing well, and it's really hard for Utah to attract that talent, so they have to draft it, and they got Lauri in a trade, and I don't know if you give that up, if that makes sense. Other trade ideas, I don't love really any of the other ones that this guy posted. I mean, the Heat wouldn't want any of these guys except for maybe Kasparis Jakuchonis. They don't care about Simone Fontecchio. They don't care about Terry Rozier. The picks would be great, but at the same time, Miami is almost always a playoff team. They're really competitive. They never really try to tank. They never really try to lose. The East is pretty weak. I think it's going to be weak for several more years, so I don't think these picks are that valuable, right? Another one was the Trailblazers. This one's interesting because the picks could be somewhat valuable. Some of them are for 2030. One's from Milwaukee. In fact, actually 2, and this is from Milwaukee. So this might actually be the best draft capital-wise, right? You get a couple Milwaukee picks, but you have no idea what Giannis will be doing in Milwaukee. So that could be really interesting. I don't think you really care about the players. You're just there to make the money work. Jeremy Grant could be interesting in Utah, kind of have the ability to maybe have a green light, develop, and then maybe get traded again at another time. Same with Matisse Thybulle. He doesn't play a lot. He hasn't been amazing. He's a really good defender when he's healthy. And the last one was the Raptors. I don't think the Raptors trade Brandon Ingram, so I don't really... This trade doesn't really mean much to me because I just don't see them trading Brandon Ingram. They just paid him. The Raptors, although they're kind of struggling right now, they had a really good start to the year. They've had moments where they've looked really good. And I also don't think they'd want to give up Brandon Ingram and Colin Murray-Boyles because he's looked really great too. So I think just looking at the trade market, I don't really see Lauri Markkanen getting traded, and if he's not going to get traded, I think the Jazz try to win games. I think they're done with the rebuild next year. That doesn't mean they're going to make the playoffs, make a push to go deep, because the West, I think, will still be really, really good next year. But I think they start to try to win, try to make the play-in. Kind of what the Blazers did last year, where they were close and they were competitive. They weren't trying to tank and get a good draft pick like the Jazz were. Kind of in that kind of range of teams, and I think it's going to be really interesting to watch, especially this draft. Now, maybe somewhat selfishly, I kind of want the Jazz to lose more this year, but have competitive games like this game, in my mind, against the Magic was the perfect game for the Jazz because it got them a lot of experience. They got to play in overtime. They got to play in big minutes. That's going to be really helpful for them developing as a team. But they also lost, which helps their chances at a better draft pick. Now, the draft lottery is so random. Last year, they had the number 1 odds, ended with the 5th pick. So maybe this year, if they end with the 6th or 7th odds, they can jump into the top 3. You just never know. And so I'm really hopeful if they can land someone like AJ or Cameron Boozer or even Darren Peterson, that could really change the franchise. And they could really move forward and look like a really great team. And kind of last thing, this is kind of a random video, but their contract situation. I think Walker Kessler getting injured really put a damper on this season, right? To really see what this team could look like if they decided not to rebuild, not to keep losing, and wanted to try to make a push for the playoffs next season. And Walker Kessler getting hurt really put a string on that, made it really difficult for them to really see what they're made of, because, I mean, they had a guy like Kevin Love playing 32 minutes tonight, right? Yusuf Nurkic, Kyle Filipowski, and Kevin Love all playing over 20 minutes tonight. That's a lot of bigs playing a lot of minutes. A couple really old ones, right? Kevin Love, he's in his late 30s. I didn't even think he'd really play much for the Jazz this year. He actually had a really good game tonight. He ended with 16 points and 16 rebounds, which is crazy. But he's not a big defensive center anymore. Kyle Filipowski I wouldn't call a rim protector. Yusuf Nurkic I also wouldn't at his age call him a rim protector. So we're just really weak defensively down low. And so I think when Walker Kessler comes back, we can be really good. And I guess the silver lining of him being injured is he might be cheaper in restricted free agency. I think him healthy, I had a feeling he was going to have a really good year. He started off the season really, really well in those first 5 games. I think he was open for a breakout year or just a really solid defensive year and with some offensive jumps. And I was worried the Jazz were going to have to pay him a lot this offseason. A really high percentage of their cap. I mean, they've already got next year almost 30% of the cap going to Lauri Markkanen. They're going to have to pay Keontae George in 2 years. So it kind of made me nervous that Walker Kessler is going to get an offer like $30 million a season from someone plus, right, or more. And they won't be able to afford that, and they'll let him walk, or they'll try to trade him, something like that, like a sign and trade. But with his injury, I think that scares some teams away, right? He's still going to get offers. I'm hopeful that the Jazz and him can just kind of come to a contract agreement in the offseason. I think the deal he wanted initially, rumors were 4 years, around $100 million. That's $25 million a season. I absolutely think a center with his defensive capabilities and his potential is worth that. And so I'm hoping they can find some sort of deal like that, and that still gives the Jazz kind of some cap room going forward. As far as this season, I'd love it if the Jazz would trade Yusuf Nurkic. I don't know if it'll happen just because they're so weak on center depth. They kind of need him right now. Like, he's playing big minutes. He's starting most games. But he's a almost $20 million expiring contract. It just seems like a waste to just have him and pay him $20 million. And he's had a relatively decent season. I think, I don't know what teams would want him specifically, but maybe a team with an injury at the backup center position, or just to get some more depth, or even just a veteran in the locker room could find some use out of him. Same with Kyle Anderson. He's got a couple years left, so it's not as much of a rush to trade him, but he's not really getting minutes on this team right now. I think a contending team could have him as end of the bench guy, something like that. That could be really helpful. So I'd love if they could make a couple trades for players like that. I would say I would love if they'd trade Kevin Love, but I actually think he's really fun on the Jazz. He's fun to watch. He's getting minutes at age 37, playing in big games, so I think that's been really entertaining. I said earlier, Kyle Filipowski is on one of the best contracts in the NBA, I think. He makes $3 million a season for the next 2 years if they accept his team option, which I'm sure they will unless something crazy happens, right? I think Shvi Mikhailuk has been a good role player. Walter Clayton's on a good long-term contract from his rookie deal. Cody Williams is someone I've kind of given up on. I would look to trade him if any teams would be interested. Try to get some more depth somewhere else. Maybe you could give him another chance in the G League. Taylor Hendricks is coming off a major injury, so you can understand he's kind of had a slow start to the season, but that makes sense. Anyways, that's kind of what I wanted to talk about in this video. I just think the Jazz are a really fun and interesting team. Let me know if you kind of like the casual, just looking at the stats and things like that, videos like that, because I really enjoy doing that. And if you enjoyed the video, give it a like and subscribe. Thanks.